back to Off Ball Takes. This is your host, your RB Laws, and this is my co-host.
Christopher Wells.
You guys showed a lot of love on our last YouTube short, and thank you from the bottom of our hearts. And we
hmm
can't wait to grow with you guys. The love is unreal. But before we kick this episode off, don't forget to always like, subscribe, and turn on our noti bell, and follow us on Instagram and Twitter at the OBT Podcast.
Yes.
But yeah, for today's episode, we've got some interesting news. Starting with injuries around the league. It's a lot of big name guys and some smaller ones here and there. But, we've got a couple updates and also some stuff that could impact, the standings and who's going to go far in the playoffs. Starting with the biggest guy, my favorite player, Kevin Durant, KD. Yeah, he went down in warm-ups actually, which is crazy. So he's expected to be reevaluated in 2 weeks after suffering a sprained ankle on Wednesday.
And just
Um,
his third game with the Suns, so
yeah,
right before his fourth game, right
yeah,
before
and I
their
think
first game.
this was going to be their first home game.
Yeah.
If okay, yeah. So yeah, this was going to be their first home game. Um, but yeah, like they're saying that he could be sidelined for the remainder of the regular season and maybe the start of the playoffs with a grade 2 ankle sprain. But
So, hmm
I I mean, all I can say is how. I don't necessarily. I saw the video of the injury. He kind of tweaked his ankle while kind of
yeah,
going up for a dunk or a layup, whatever, in the warm up line. But it's just unfortunate. It's a really bad stroke of luck that didn't need to hit Phoenix that way, and definitely not Kevin Durant. But
right.
yeah, I'm really at a loss for words of
Yeah.
how he
So
even got hurt.
it was like you said, it was during the warm ups. He just kind of takes a slip and just falls, unfortunately, and he still finished the warm up workout. I
Yeah,
guess maybe on kind of off of adrenaline, but then they announced he was out, so you kind of knew once that happened there was going to be some trouble. And then apparently he left the game with a walking boot on,
right.
so you kind of knew. According to Shams Charania, he had an MRI today, and they think he's going to be out at least 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay.
Obviously, as we get closer to the end of the season, maybe they might hold him out longer, maybe depending on how he feels, how they're looking standings wise, because like you said, this could impact the standings. But
Right.
it's definitely going to be really interesting because obviously, regardless of what happens, he's going to be out for a while. And considering he's only played 3 games with them, you kind of would have preferred for him to stay healthy so they can get those reps in,
Right.
kind of learn how to play. I mean, obviously, the advantage for him is he's a rare type of player where whenever he comes back, he's usually pretty much like himself. You don't really see like a lot of rust from him. He kind of just looks like what he normally does.
Yeah.
So that's good for him. And he's very easy to plug and play as a player. It's just obviously you'd like to get those reps because Paul and Booker are going to have to play differently without him just because they're going to have the ball in their hands a lot more. And the last game they played against Oklahoma City, they did very well, right? Booker had 30 at halftime, finished
Right.
with over 40 points for the game. Chris Paul had a really good game, but still, you'd hate to see these type of injuries, especially as we get close towards the end of the season. And as we're going to talk about, there's a bunch of guys that unfortunately had to deal with situations similar to this.
Yeah. It's plaguing the league, and and it's honestly that time of year where we kind of start seeing guys give into fatigue. We kind of start even seeing the higher seeds potentially sitting their guys, but not this season. I don't think in terms of the sitting, because we'll get into it later. But the standings are pretty tight, especially in the West.
Yeah. Moving on, then we got another unfortunate injury. We actually had two guys hurt in the same game, but we'll get to this first one, Luka Doncic against the Pelicans. He hurts his ankle.
Right.
So they claim that it's kind of not really a serious injury, that he'll probably come back once the discomfort is gone. We don't really have a timeline for his recovery, but Dallas lost this game, and this was kind of a crucial game for them. They were losing before he got hurt. They kind of tried to make a comeback while
Right.
he was out. But, of course, they've really struggled on the defensive end, with or without Luka. So it's going to be tough. And they dropped from 6 to 8. And like we said, every game, from here on out for a lot of these teams is really important, especially if you're playing a team that's also competing for a standing spot. So it's just, we kind of have to keep an eye out for these injuries, similar to these other two guys. Zion Williamson, according to Shams Charania, is going to be out at least 2 more weeks. So he's already been out since, I guess, early January, right? Yeah, January
Yeah,
2nd.
yeah.
Yeah. So, of course, this is another blow. And then Brandon Ingram for New Orleans also got hurt in the same game
Ugh.
Luca got hurt in. So
Yeah,
we don't know how long he's going to be out. We just know he's got an ankle injury. Hopefully it's not long term because, we saw they lost 10 games in a row during that stretch when both Zion and Ingram were out.
right.
And, it got really rough for them. And they look so good during the early part of the season. So it's just kind of a shame to see, them fall off so much, especially again, just from a basketball standpoint. You don't want to see these guys miss time, but that's what's kind of happened here, unfortunately.
Yeah, and we've talked about the Pelicans multiple times. We are in love with their talent. We're in love with their potential, but yeah, this injury-ridden team is just it's really unfortunate because they have so much talent that we have yet to even see. Like they've barely scratched the surface, but yeah, this is gonna hurt them in the long run, just not this season, I think.
And then another guy, not actually long before we got on the record, maybe like a couple hours prior, Jonathan Kuminga for the Warriors, similar situation to KD.
Yeah,
He hurt himself in the warm up, so was out for this game. That's still going on. It's kind of late in the fourth quarter. It looks like Memphis might pull it out. We'll see, 122-105. But yeah, we don't know. Again, we don't know how long he's going to be out, if he's going to be out at all. But it's
right.
again another injury that has to impact the standings because all these guys are really important to their teams. I know Kaminga isn't necessarily in the same position as Durant or Luca or Zion, but again, he's a guy that's been getting a lot of minutes, especially since they made those deals at the deadline. So
Right.
you can't ask for these guys. You don't want these guys to be out because you need them in order to win.
Yeah, I don't understand what explains these injuries that we're seeing in the
Right.
pregame warmups. That's just what's on my
Right.
mind.
Yeah. Those are
I,
just bad luck, I
yeah,
think.
it has to be a fluke. That's all we can really chalk it up to. um, but yeah, it's a blow to the Warriors, especially since their main struggle has been being healthy and consistent. So, yeah, this could hurt them in come playoff time too.
Yeah. I mean, there have been some reports from different people or some thoughts from others where they believe part of it is just because guys are coming into the league
Yeah,
already playing a ton, right, through AAU, through high school, through college. And by the time they're in the NBA, I guess they're supposedly kind of already sort of damaged goods in a way.
right.
They put a lot of mileage on their bodies,
Yeah,
but again, like some of these are also, like we said, just bad luck, right? The Durant injury and the Kaminga injury, that's just you slip and you fall. There's nothing you can really do about that. I mean,
none.
especially if it's a wet spot on the floor. I didn't hear about that for Kaminga because they didn't really mention a lot about it. But I know for Durant, I was under the impression that they were saying that there was kind of a wet spot. But um,
Yeah,
maybe I'm wrong about that. But still,
with
like,
Kaminga, I saw the video for that too, and
okay,
immediately once he fell, they kind of wiped the floor.
yeah,
So
okay,
we
that's
can
what I'm
just
saying.
chalk it up to wet spots, and that's bad
Right,
luck.
exactly, yeah, and it's unfortunate because this, like you said, this has kind of been the theme for a lot of these teams, right? Like the Warriors, right? Steph missed a ton of time. Wiggins has been out.
Yeah,
Other guys have been out, right? Obviously Durant just recently came back. He's only played 3 games because he already missed over a month, and then
right.
after he comes back, just 3 games later, he gets hurt again, and he's going to be out at least a few more weeks, right? Zion's been out for a while at this point, right? He's not played that much at all. I think there was a stat I saw earlier that mentioned that he's averaged like 28 and a half games through his first 4 years, which is
Crazy.
that's just awful.
Yeah,
And so
that's
it's
bad.
just, yeah. And I don't know. I mean, we've talked about it before with these injuries, but like I said, I don't know. I don't feel like it's just one thing. I do
Right.
think that obviously all those games before you get into the NBA doesn't help. So obviously there could be changes there, but then it's like they have made some changes to try to, you know, prevent some of these injuries, but they still happen, right? Because
Yeah.
ultimately it is a contact sport. But it would be nice if we could find some ways to,
Mitigate it. Yeah.
to help mitigate it. Because again, we don't want guys to miss significant time, especially if there's a situation where it can be avoided, right? Slipping and falling, you can't necessarily avoid, but
Right.
an injury that may be related to stress, or just wear and tear, right? I'm sure there's better ways to mitigate those.
Yeah. I agree
But
with all your
I do want to
points.
say I'm not a doctor,
Yeah.
so
Sure. We are not medical students. We don't.
right.
We're not in that field. We're just two guys talking about basketball.
Exactly. Um, Yeah, so I guess now we might as well hop into the standings.
Oh yeah, I'm
Uh,
I'm down.
yeah, so we'll start in the Western Conference because that's kind of where all the action is at
Oh
this
yeah,
point.
it's tight.
So yeah, so we'll move up. We'll kind of ignore the Spurs and the Rockets because
Yeah,
they've been out of it for a while now and they want to be out of it. But um, obviously you got the Utah Jazz, the Blazers, and the OKC Thunder. They're pretty much in a three-way tie. Um, I think as we speak, it seems like Utah just pulled out a win against the Orlando Magic. So
okay.
I think standings wise, that's going to put them up to 11. Um, Utah is kind of one of those teams that we talked about where maybe they'll stay, maybe they'll hang around, but maybe they won't.
Right.
I thought kind of around the trade deadline that maybe they might still hang around just because they have enough talent. They lost four in a row prior to this game that they won, but it's so close. You still have to factor in strength of schedule. I believe the Jazz have the third toughest schedule left. So obviously that's going to make it tough for them to kind of hang around.
Right.
Um, but still, you never know, right? Like these teams, anybody can win at any time. They might just rattle off a few wins, but I feel like for them, it's still probably in their best interest to probably just let it go and just kind of fall out. Because
Yeah.
even though they've won a bunch of games, like standings wise, they're still going to get like a top 10 pick if they fall out of the play in. So it's like if I'm Utah, that's what I would do. But I don't run that team. So
Yeah.
what are you thinking about Utah?
I'm pretty much with you on it. Like,
Hmm.
and it's interesting because we've always counted out Utah from the beginning of the season, pretty much. And they've always kind of found a way to climb back in, but I think it's a little bit too late for them. And if I was Utah, what I would probably do is, they showcase that they have talent on their team now. They showcase it's a good roster. They showcase they can win. They showcase they can compete. Now, you're looking at it, you're 13. Do you really want to go in the play-in just to lose? I think if they go into the play-in, they're probably going to lose. That would be my prediction. Um, and I think that's probably what they're looking at too. And I think they're
Hmm.
probably just gonna sit back and maybe just let the flow of the game happen and just not really force wins or I'm not gonna say tank. I don't like to use that word, but I think they're
Right.
probably gonna look for a way to maybe rise in the draft or something like that. I think that's what we're
Okay.
gonna probably look at, and they can
Yeah.
add some more young guys. I doubt any free agents are coming there, but yeah, I think they can definitely get some young guys in the draft if they continue to lose. But they did just win today, but
Yeah.
we'll see.
Kind of an interesting.
Utah's a
Yeah.
weird. They're such a
Yeah.
weird team.
Yeah, and they had kind of a sort of a resurgence story with Chris Dunn, former lottery pick,
Right.
all of a sudden on a 10-day playing really well. But yeah, kind of an interesting situation there. Portland, they're currently also in that similar spot. I feel like unlike Utah, Portland is trying to win,
Yes.
but like they're just not necessarily good enough. I mean, Nurkic just came back. But I don't know. Their defense is just not very good, and they're kind of another team that has like a really tough schedule.
Right.
According to Tankathon, they have the seventh hardest remaining schedule, so
Okay.
that's kind of a tough spot to be in if you're Portland. But again, like in fairness, all these teams are only a few games out. Maybe if Lillard has another stretch where he just scores 30, 40, 50, maybe, but I don't know. I feel like it's going to be really tough for them to hang on.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think they're in the winning mindset of things. They have the same record as the Jazz, but it's a little bit different because you got Dame, and you don't want to waste Dame's golden years like we've said on previous episodes of the podcast. But it's a tricky situation because they're also fighting with a lot of teams above them. They got to pray for them to lose and win games, which they've been struggling to do, to be honest.
Mm.
And yeah, it's really unfortunate because, like you said, they're just not good enough to win at the rate that they
Right.
we want them to. Because I feel like everybody roots for Dame. Nobody really hates on him, but
Right.
yeah, it's a completely different situation, but it's the same record. So, and that's what I love about the standings. Like, each team is so different and unique that their
Yeah.
stories and what their goals are also very different too.
Yeah. Moving on to OKC, they're kind of again in that similar situation as well. Um, so for them, they're also in a interesting situation, but again, still different. So unlike Utah, right? So, well, I guess similar to Utah, they're a team that, is young. right? That doesn't necessarily like have a reason to win.
Right.
But the difference is, I feel like with OKC is they have more guys that they would probably like to build around,
Yeah.
right? Because with OKC, you have Shea, you have Giddy, you have the Jalen Williams guys, both of them honestly,
Yeah. They're both really good.
especially Jalen Jaylen,
Mm-hmm.
uh, forward. Um, and then obviously at a certain point you'll get Chet back next season. Uh, Pokashevsky next season. You still have some lottery picks. So I feel like for them, they're kind of just competing. They also have a really easy schedule. I think they have the 27th, um, I guess easiest schedule. So
Yeah.
essentially, or yeah, so essentially that means like it's very easy.
Right.
Or I guess 27th toughest schedule. So yeah, it's an
Yeah.
easy schedule the rest of the way. So they could kind of sneak in there. I feel like that's the team. I guess at this point, I feel like at this point I would probably pick OKC more likely than Utah to make it in. But again, you never know because Shea's kind of been battling an injury. So, if they kind of rest him at different points, maybe they fall out. But I feel like of these three teams, I feel like Oklahoma City is probably the one that's most likely to get in just
Yeah.
because they have like a number of guys. And, unlike Portland, like they don't have a ton of size, like in terms of bigs, but they still have a lot of like athletic guys with
Right.
some size, right? You got Shea at 6'6", Giddy at 6'8", right? The Williams guys, they're both big. Um, and I do like this team a lot. So I feel like that's probably the team of these three that's probably the most likely to maybe kind of sneak in the 10.
Right.
But again, of course, we'll talk about the teams above them, but still. Like I feel like if this is probably your best one.
Yeah. I think the Thunder are probably the favorite of the three to actually potentially get into the play-in playoffs, whatever you want to predict for them. But
Yeah.
they're so young, and I think that's what's fueling them. They have a drive. Like we said, all three of these teams have the same record, different situations. But with OKC, I think this is a good opportunity. Well, this season was a great opportunity for them to see what they had. Shea came into his own. Giddy stepped up. He's become like a really good playmaker. And he doesn't do it with a lot of flash, and it's
Right.
simple and it works and it's effective. And they've got other young guys like you said, and without Chet, and now they're gonna have Chet next
Yeah.
season, so it should be
And
fun.
another lottery pick.
Exactly. So they're building. They're in the rebuilding phase, and I think this is what a rebuild should look like. They've steadily progressed over the past few years, and I'm not mad at it at all. I would love to see them, potentially get to the number 10 or something like that. But yeah, I mean, this is just great. This is just great. I love the playoffs and talking
Yeah.
about standings.
So moving on, we got two teams tied for ninth. You got the New Orleans Pelicans and the Lakers. So
Oh
the
boy.
Lakers, I guess, are technically, I guess, at ninth more so because they own the tiebreaker, but
Right.
they have the same record. So between those two teams, it's kind of tough to kind of talk about because both teams have kind of dealt with injuries
Right.
all throughout the season and including right now, right? With the Lakers, obviously LeBron's out. Um, and then for New Orleans, Zion been out for a long time now. Ingram, he just got hurt. We'll see how long he's going to be out. Of these two teams, if you look at their last 10 games, they're completely opposite. So New Orleans in their last 10 games have been 3-7,
Right.
and the Lakers in their last 10 games have been 7-3. So I feel like with this Lakers team, if they can get healthy, I feel like that might be the team that you might want to be more optimistic on, if anything, only because I just don't know when Zion's coming back. But at the same time, New Orleans also has the easier schedule.
Right.
They have let's see, they have the 26th hardest schedule. Oh, well, shoot, never mind. The Lakers actually have the 29th. Okay,
Oh,
never mind.
really? Huh.
Yeah, so both teams actually have easy schedules the
Okay.
rest of the way. But I guess the difference is that with New Orleans, we still need to kind of know how long Ingram's going to be out. Because if he's going to be out for a long stretch, then that completely changes it, even with an easy schedule.
Yeah.
With the Lakers, you still have AD playing at a high level. They're going to get D'Angelo Russell back next game. So I don't know. I feel like of those two teams, I would probably be a little bit higher on the Lakers, even though
Same.
both teams obviously have their health struggles.
Yeah.
Just because of the last 10 games, I feel like we've seen a lot more from the Lakers.
Yeah. Like to piggyback off of what you said, I look more at these teams with the scope of who's really healthy and who's out, because we have to look at it like this. With the Pelicans, we don't know the timeline for BI. so we don't know how long he's going to be out or if he even comes back. Um, so we got to look at CJ McCollum. Is he going to be enough to, you know, is he going to be able to shoulder the load?
Right.
And with the Lakers, I think AD is going to be able to do it. Um, he's proven it multiple times, and he's been pretty consistent recently. I have to give him that. He dropped, I think, 39 a
Yeah.
few days ago. So
Yeah.
I don't really have an issue with that. I think he'll probably carry them over the finish line. I'm not sure where they're going to finish, but I think they could probably finish at 9. I think they're going to stay where they are. And
The
yeah,
only issue with AD is just you don't know how long he can, hold up before he might have
right.
to miss time. You just don't know.
Yeah. But I think while he's there and while he's available, I think his impact is going to be a little bit more than CJ McCollum. So that's how I'm
Sure.
looking at the
Especially
situation.
defensively.
Yeah, especially defensively.
Mm.
So that's how I'm looking at the situation. I'm taking the Lakers, and I think, yeah, since they have the same record, I think the Lakers will probably come out on top.
All right. Moving on to 7 and 8. So we got Dallas at 8, Minnesota at 7. Mavericks are kind of in a similar situation with New Orleans where they've been trending downwards. The
Yep.
Kyrie trade hasn't really helped them.
Yeah.
They just haven't been able to defend. Same issues that we talked about when they made the trade, right? Which is one
Right.
of the reasons why we like the trade more so for Brooklyn than Dallas, because we just felt like, hey, I mean, how are they going to be able to defend? It's nice that you
Yeah.
have Kyrie, but still, got to be able to play both ends of the floor. Minnesota has quietly kind of been okay in this stretch. I think a little better than people expected, right?
Mm-hmm.
Conley's been fine. McDaniels defensively has been awesome. Gobert has
Yeah.
been fine. Edwards has been great. So maybe they kind of stick around in that 7 spot, and but at the same time, they also have a semi-difficult schedule. They have the 10th hardest schedule. So we'll kind of see where that goes there. And again, a lot of these teams will face each other at certain points in the season. So those games are going to be very important to see where they go. I still feel like I would probably be higher on Minnesota than Dallas.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, although, we'll have to see what it looks like when Towns comes back. I mean, he's
Right.
missed so much time.
Yeah.
We don't know when he's coming back, but I feel like I kind of like the Minnesota team better than Dallas. I still would not have done the Gobert trade, right? So I'm still not
Right.
defending that decision.
Yeah.
But
I get
I
you.
think at the very least they've been better as of late, than they were, and I think they do deserve credit for that.
Yeah.
But still, yeah. So of these two teams, I believe more in Minnesota.
Okay. I'm not gonna lie. I gotta stick to my guns, and
Okay.
I gotta disagree with you. I'm taking the Mavs. I think the Mavs. I think they can. I just like the Mavericks better, and I picked them earlier in the season to go pretty far in the playoffs, and
For
that
sure.
hasn't really been shaping up to be the case. And
Hmm.
it's simply because they can't close games, defensively. Like
Yeah.
they just let anybody let it fly, and there's no contests, nothing. So that's probably going to hurt them a lot. And with Minnesota, I feel like they've just kind of snuck in and
Yeah.
been like almost like a Cinderella. Like it's so weird.
Yeah.
It's really weird because a lot of
Yeah,
people
they've
counted the
quietly been better than I think people expected, given what they looked like earlier in the
yeah,
season. Because at different
like
points they were much lower in the standings.
yeah, like I feel like a lot of people counted them out when Cat went down too. Like because people were like, this roster isn't really that bolstered up without Cat. But if they're doing this without Cat, I would have been curious to see what would have happened if Towns was playing and healthy. But
Right.
yeah, I gotta take the Mavericks just because
Okay.
I'm hoping that Kyrie you know displays some leadership qualities that he's failed to in past years. I know that's a bad gamble to bet on Kyrie to do something like that, but I'm hoping that he can change the narrative and that they can just get a little higher than eighth, please.
Right.
I really don't want to backtrack on my words, but
Right.
yeah, I've got to stick with the Mavs, man.
Yeah. I guess my concern also would be like, yeah, if Luka's going to be out for a while, you know, how tough is it going to be? But that's kind
Right,
of one of the reasons why you get Kyrie, because so that way, if
exactly.
Luka's going to be out, you have him that can, win games for you because of
Yeah,
his talent. So yeah,
exactly.
I think the Dallas pick is fair. I'm just saying, just as of late, it feels like Minnesota's been better, and I just trust them better defensively.
Yeah, I get you.
Um, yeah. Moving on into the top 6. So these
Oh
are
boy.
the teams that for now are avoiding the play-in. So at 6 we got the Clippers. So, we talked about them. They, added Russell Westbrook after the trade deadline in the buyout
Right.
market. They lost their first 5 games with him. They lost, but now they've won, back to back. They've done some different things, right? He's not playing quite as many minutes.
Right.
And they've also had these other lineups where they go, smaller, and it's been fine. It's just at different points. It's just one of the cogs is kind of Zubac. It feels like he's their only like really good defensive big.
Okay.
So it
Yeah.
feels like whenever he's off the floor, they really struggle. But I don't know. Like this team has been just really up and down at different points, and it's just kind of hard for me to believe in them. Kawhi's been really great, as of late. So that's obviously a plus, right? Because you need him and Paul George to be really good, for them to be able to win games. But I don't know. Like this team has been really hard to predict. Like it wouldn't shock me if they just won like 4 or 5 in a row, but then it wouldn't shock
Right.
me if they lost 4 or 5 in a row. I still feel like the teams above them I like better. But you never know. I mean, but at the same time, their schedule also is, you know, a tougher-ish schedule. They're kind of like in the middle of the pack in terms of schedule strength. They have some big matchups coming up right against teams like Memphis, Phoenix, Golden State. But obviously with injuries that kind of changes things. So we'll see. But yeah, I do kind of want to see how they work out the Westbrook thing.
Right.
Maybe it'll be better, but I don't know. I still feel like come playoff time, it's just not going to work out. But for the regular season, we'll see what they can do the rest of the way.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. With the Clippers, they've been very disappointing, very underwhelming. A huge letdown for me. Considering that their roster looks really good on paper, they have two of the best two-way players in the NBA currently, and they just can't figure it out. I'm not sure what it is. It doesn't look like it's coaching. It just seems like they haven't really been healthy too. Um, and they just try so many different things, and I just don't think that they found the groove yet. And like you were saying with Zubac, when he's out, they look really bad. Like they kind of just let everything,
Especially defensively.
yeah, they just let everything go. They just let people
Yeah.
drive. It's really bad. And then with Russ, Russ does what he sometimes does, which is the
Right.
turnovers and the wide open threes that break.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
it's a tough situation, but not where I had them going, like placed earlier in the season. I thought they were going to be really good, but six is as good as you can get with the woes that they've had. And I think they can potentially move up if they can just figure it out. If they figure it out, I think they can overtake Golden State because, well, we talked about it earlier. Kaminga's out.
Right.
It's not going to impact the Warriors, I don't think,
Mm.
like, crazy, but, it is technically a blow, and, you got to take into account psychologically all kinds of things. All kinds of things factor into injuries. And
Um,
it
mhm.
just seems like with Draymond or with the Warriors, Draymond went on his podcast and was like, yeah, he doesn't know why they lose games on the road. And I don't know
Yeah.
what their schedule looks like
It's
wise.
kind of tough.
Okay. Yeah, I don't
So they
know
have the
if
eighth
they
hardest remaining schedule, and I know one of the reasons why is because they also have a ton of road games remaining. And they have
Warriors,
like,
right?
yeah,
Oh boy. That's
yeah,
not good cuz they
and the
they suck.
standings just changed.
What happened?
So yeah, so Golden State they played Memphis, they got blown out. So now Golden State dropped from 5 to 8. Um, Minnesota's at 7,
Okay.
Dallas is at 6, and the Clippers are at 5.
Okay. Well, we basically spoke it into existence with the Clippers moving up.
Yeah. Now
That's
again, that's just
probably
temporary,
Yeah, that's
maybe.
probably going to change again.
Yeah,
But as of right now, the Clippers have overtaken the Warriors, apparently.
yeah,
No surprise. I kind of thought that was going to happen. And, we were
yeah,
just saying with the Warriors, they've got a lot of road games, and they've struggled on the road. And they look like a
yeah,
terrible team on the road. And
yeah. They
Draymond said
just
he
lost
doesn't know
another game
why.
on the road to Memphis. So
Exactly. So it's not looking good for the Warriors. And I didn't really want to talk about them, immediately, but I kind of had to just looking at the standings.
right. So moving on, we got Phoenix at 4.
Oh, yeah.
So obviously we talked about it earlier with the Durant injury. That maybe changes things. I mean,
Right.
they were still doing good in the standings before he got there
Mm-hmm.
because
Yeah,
they had a good team before he got there. They just
for
had a
sure.
lot of injuries earlier in the season. So that obviously didn't help because they, struggled at different points just because, they had games where they had Chris Paul out, Booker out, Eaton out, sometimes both or
Right.
all three.
Yep.
So, I mean, but they still have an opportunity to stay up in the standings. They have the second easiest schedule. No, no. They have the second hardest schedule
Ooh.
left. So that's kind of tough, obviously, without Durant. Um, so that's not great, but still, I still feel like even without Durant, you have Paul, you have Booker, you have Ayton. I think
Right.
that they can still win a lot of these games. Again, it's just kind of like what we talked about in the previous podcast, right? Is Chris Paul going to kind of pick up his play? He's kind of had an up and down season.
Right.
But if he can kind of pick it up as we get closer towards the end of the regular season, they'll still be able to win games. It's for them, it's more so about the playoffs.
Right.
Because we know with Durant, with Booker, with Paul, with Ayton, we know that they're going to be good anyways. So for them, just stay where they're at. And again, there's still an opportunity to move up. Because
Yeah.
we're going to get into it with this next team. But obviously, Memphis, has kind of had, kind of a rough stretch and potentially maybe a rougher stretch. We'll see. But this from 2 to 4 is also kind of a race that not as many people talk about. But because of Memphis's slide, now it's gotten to the point where it could be any of these three teams that we're about to talk about.
Right. So, I'm just gonna kind of go over my quick thoughts about the Suns. It all comes down to Chris Paul. I'm sorry. That in my opinion, that's what it comes down to. He needs to step it up. With Durant out, you need to make plays for everyone and also make sure that the plays that you're making for yourself aren't hurting the team. You got to be efficient, slow it down a little bit and take your time. I think that's going to be the message that they're going to try and spread. And D Book, he's going to do his thing. I'm not really concerned about that. The main person I'm concerned about is Chris Paul. So,
Yeah, with Durant, it's kind of interesting because in the games that they played, it seemed like the defenses were kind of like, all right, if Durant has the ball and he kicks it out to Chris Paul, kind of just like let him turn into a spot up shooter.
yep.
Then you kind of just have to see what he can do. He was kind of struggling from three earlier in the season, but I feel like it's been better. If
Yeah.
he knocks down those shots, it'll be fine.
Yeah.
But again, like you said, he's gonna have to adjust, and it's gonna be tough. He's an older player, not quite what he once was, but I think he still has something left in the tank, especially
Yeah.
now that he doesn't have to carry quite as much of the offense with Durant. But yeah, I think he's kind of the biggest piece, even more so than say like a DeAndre Ayton, just because Ayton doesn't necessarily have to have a lot of plays run for him now. He can kind of just be, clean up guy, throw the ball to him around the basket, and kind of see what he can do. Especially now, it's harder to play or double him with Durant out there. So,
Yeah. And I have faith in him. I'm not hating on him. I'm just saying,
I,
let's go. We,
yeah,
we got to, it's playoff time, man.
yeah. So moving on up. So of course, this standings thing is gonna change a little bit, right? Because Memphis they just beat Golden State. So currently they're 2, but they're only half a game up on Sacramento, and Sacramento's about to play.
Right.
So if Sacramento plays, and they win, they'll be 2. So I guess we can just kind of just mention Memphis right now. So obviously, we all know the Josh situation. So he's away from the team. He's going to be out for at least 4 more games.
Yeah.
And obviously that's tough, right? Because they have other issues to deal with as well, right? Steven Adams reportedly today he's going to be out for at least 4 more weeks. So that pretty much means his regular season is over.
Right.
Brandon Clark's season is completely over. He tore
Right.
his Achilles. And those are guys that were really important to the team, right? I mean, those are 2 of their bigs. They help on the boards. Um, they help with screens, and all that other good stuff. So it's just like, these hurt. And obviously Ja's their best player. He's going to be out. It's kind of funny because, last year, a lot was discussed about how, they had a better record without Ja in the regular season than with
Yeah.
him. I'm not sure what it is this season, but, obviously they just beat Golden State without Ja Morant. But, you know, I feel like they'll still be able to hang on standings wise. It's not going to be very easy, right? Because you're without your best player as well as other guys, but they do
Right.
have one of the easiest schedules remaining. Um, so that obviously helps, right? They got games against like Houston, San Antonio, Orlando, right? So like there's wins to be had, but then they also have some other games that I think are going to be hard, right? Milwaukee, Golden State, so we'll see. But I think for them, I don't think they're going to drop like much past 4. We'll see. It just kind of depends because obviously with Phoenix they just lost Durant. right? So if both teams kind of just win around the same, then it's not going to change, right? But we'll have to see what injuries impact which team more.
Yeah. It's more of like a battle of perseverance with these
Yeah,
seeds. Like,
exactly.
you know, Kings and
Yeah,
Grizzlies are pretty much neck and neck. But
yeah,
you know, with the Suns and Grizzlies, the thing
yeah,
is now you've got your both your best players are out, right?
right.
So now
Yeah,
it's going to come down to the structure of the team, coaching, all that stuff.
yeah,
So
right.
we'll see what goes down.
Yeah, with Durant, I would have thought that Phoenix would pass Memphis.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
I mean, I still think Phoenix can win, but still, we'll just have to see because Phoenix was playing, better basketball than Memphis over the
Right.
last stretch, right? Phoenix was like 7-3,
Yeah.
Memphis was like 500 basically. Um, and then we move on to Sacramento, right? So
Like the
in that
beam.
exactly in that 2-3 spot, they've kind of been, I think the biggest surprise this season. I
Yeah.
mean, a lot of people there were a lot of people that were kind of saying like, "Hey, look out for the Kings." But, most of them still probably thought they'd probably be more like a play-in team,
Oh yeah.
right? Or maybe like a low, 6 seed or something like that, but definitely not at the top of the Western Conference. This team has been really awesome this year. They're horrible defensively, but offensively they're amazing.
Yeah.
Uh, the
Clutch
chemistry
too.
exactly with De'Aaron Fox and Sabonis. It was kind of funny because I remember and many people have talked about it, right? When that Halliburton Sabonis trade happened last year, a lot of people felt like Sacramento really made a mistake
Right.
because Halliburton was really good, and it just felt like, why are you making a move for Sabonis? But I mean, it's worked out for both teams now, but it's definitely worked out for Sacramento really well. I mean, there was kind of some chemistry you could see building last season towards the end between Fox and Sabonis. But at the same time, you weren't necessarily sure what you were getting with De'Aaron Fox, but
Right.
he's been much better this season.
Oh
He's
yeah.
been great. Kind of in that all NBA caliber spot, sort of. We'll talk about that as we get closer towards the end of the season, but it's been really great to see Keegan Murray. That was another guy where a lot of people really criticized that draft pick,
Yeah.
but he's, come in ready to play right out of the gates. He's been really impactful. Malik Monk off the bench has been great. I mean, it's been a great story, for a team that's been out of the playoffs for, almost 20 years at this point. I think the longest streak in professional sports.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, we were basically like kids the last time the
Pretty
Kings were in the
much.
playoffs. Yeah, so it's been a great story, and it's always fun to kind of just watch them play because when they're out there, it's a really entertaining group of guys. Mike Brown deserves a ton of credit as the coach. A lot of people thought it was kind of like a mid-level hire, but he's been great for them. And it's been a great story and a great team. So for
Yeah.
them, I still don't necessarily believe in them come playoff time, but
Right.
we'll see. Because again, their offense has been incredible to the point where they could win. Maybe a round, just depending on who their matchup is. I think for them, they're the most matchup dependent of any of these teams up top. Because
Yeah.
normally you wouldn't expect a top 3 seed to lose in the first round. But I feel like there's a lot of people who just feel like Sacramento is kind of the team to be had, just because of the teams up top. They're kind of the strangest one.
Right.
So, we'll see. But for them, they also are another team that has a really tough schedule. They have the sixth hardest schedule remaining. So that could obviously change some things, but they just keep on winning. They're 7-3 in the last 10.
Yeah. Nothing but positive things to really say about them. And you know, it kind of reminds me of how Utah used to be with um Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell, you know, the talk about them only potentially being good in the regular season, come playoffs they might, you know, flop or flame out. But I mean, I enjoy the team. I love watching them, like, and to
Yeah.
see their highlights like every night, and you know, the light the beam thing, like it's just
Yeah.
good vibes. It's always great
Exactly.
to see a franchise, you know, dig out from the depths. Patiently waiting, but we'll see. For the
Yeah.
Wizards, but you know, with the Kings, um, yeah, nothing but positivity. They look really good, and you know, there is some skepticism with if they can win, and we just have to see. Like you said, it
Yeah.
depends on who the heck they get matched up with.
Yeah. Yeah.
Come
I will
playoffs,
say I will say, even if they go out in the first round, like, you can't
you
you would
can't
have
hate.
to say this is a successful
Yeah,
season, right? Like, if I'm the Kings, even if you get embarrassed in the first round, I would still be pretty happy just again because again, it's been forever since they made the playoffs, and that's kinda all you can really ask for, and,
right.
again, of course, there's an opportunity maybe to improve, but yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. So obviously at the top of the West, Denver, they've basically been the number one seed for a while. Pretty much at this point, I think have pulled away. Um, they're pretty much 7 games ahead of the Kings and the Grizzlies. So I feel like they're gonna stay there.
Right.
Um, obviously you got Jokic, he's been great. Jamal Murray's been playing really well. Porter's been playing well. Aaron Gordon having his best season basically as a pro. And they have guys that fit. Their post deadline additions have been kind of mixed, I guess. Reggie Jackson's been okay. Thomas Bryant's been okay, but it still feels like there's some weird stuff going on there. We'll see, but for Denver, they've been very stable, easily the most consistent team as of late. I mean, they lost in a weird game to the Bulls where they got blown out, but still they've been 8-2 in their last 10.
Yeah.
They're great at home, 30-5. So it feels weird. If it wasn't for Phoenix, I would feel really good about Denver, but still at the same time, I still feel like Denver can be had. But again, there's not really any complaints you can have because I mean, other than like the first couple weeks of the season, they've basically been one of the best teams. So I
Right.
mean, like, how are you feeling about this Denver team? Because like I said, I do like them. I think they're really good. It's just again, it's just kind of tough because I don't feel as strongly about most of the Western teams as the top of the East. But with Denver, I still think they're very good, and of course, they're the most stable one. So I feel like they may be the most comfortable pick.
Right.
But it wouldn't shock me, I guess, if there was another team that came out. I don't think they're like an overwhelming team. Because again, you have Phoenix, right, with Durant. So
Yeah. With Denver, I think they're a great team, but there's too many question marks, you know? Um, and the first one for me is Michael Porter Jr. I'm not completely sold on him yet. He's good,
right,
but he's not
yeah.
great, in my
You
opinion.
just kind of wonder at different points in the game, what is it going to look like? When
Exactly.
yeah,
And same thing with Jamal Murray. I know he's coming off the injury, so I give him the pass for that. But with him, he's been kind of spotty a little bit, but he's great. And we know what he can do.
right.
But I don't know. I don't know. There's just too many questions for me to crown them, going to the finals or even winning it.
I
I
I
think
guess
the
one
East is just stronger at the top
right.
seeds.
I do kind of wonder if Denver, because it feels kind of like a lot of people are leaning towards Jokic being the MVP. I do kind of wonder if Denver kind of comes up short. What is the narrative going to be like? If he wins 3 straight MVPs, the first guy to do it, I think, since Larry Bird, right? So
Right.
it's basically been 40 years. Um, and what is it going to look like if they, end up not coming out of the Western Conference,
Right.
or worst case scenario, maybe they go out, before they get to the conference finals.
Right.
Because I feel like that would be kind of a disappointment. And I feel like the narrative may start flipping on him in a similar way where it kind of felt like it was going with Giannis before he won the title. But
Yeah.
again, that's kind of like why, it's okay if you don't win a title, in your early 20s, because most guys usually don't.
No, yeah.
But I do kind of wonder where that narrative is going because I feel like we're going to be headed there because I know there's a lot of people that feel like this guy should not have won 3 straight MVPs.
Yeah, they're gonna flip it. You know how it goes. We've seen it multiple times, and you know it's just unfortunate. And here's the thing: the number one seed doesn't mean anything. Right.
Right.
Technically,
Yeah.
number one doesn't mean you're going to the finals. Number one doesn't mean you're winning the finals. It just
Right.
means that you're the best regular season team. Simple as that.
Yeah.
So that's what we need to really focus on and drill down and see. Okay, so
It's
the
a
Nuggets
regular season
are
award.
yeah, so the Nuggets are the best regular season team. But can they deliver come playoffs? That's the question. And we'll see. I mean, they're set in stone. Like you said, they pulled away. They're number one, solidified. But come playoffs, can they win in the finals? That's the question.
Right. Yeah. So I guess now that we're done with the West, I guess we might as well move on to the Eastern Conference, to kind of wrap this up. So Detroit, Charlotte, they're pretty much out of it, so we don't really have to kind of go into
Yeah.
that. Orlando, they've kind of had some injuries, right? Jonathan Isaac, I don't think we had talked about it, but his season is over. Before it really even began, he
Yeah.
only played, I think, like what, 10 games, maybe fewer than that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, before he had torn adductor injury.
Yeah.
Wendell Carter Jr.'s been out. So it feels like they're probably like done. I mean, they were kind of a team where it felt like maybe they might be able to get into the plan, but I at this point I think that's probably it. And
Yeah,
again, for them, it's better for them if they miss the playoffs and get another lottery pick, and they might get 2 lottery picks.
exactly.
With Chicago's situation, we'll see. But starting with Indiana, 29-37. 2 games or 2 losses, 2 more losses than the Wizards at 10. So they have a chance. But again, you know, they've kind of at times battled some weird situations. Right, Halliburton was out, and I feel like for them, they don't. I mean, the guys play hard, right? But
Yeah,
I feel like for Indiana, I don't necessarily know if they want to make the plan. They were a
right.
playoff team earlier in the season, and I feel like if Halliburton hadn't have gotten hurt, they would still be a playoff
Oh
team.
yeah,
But obviously, like situations change, and once he got hurt, kind of felt like at that point they were kind of teetering towards, all right, let's just kind of settle for another lottery pick at this point.
right.
But it was kind of weird because there was a stretch where they looked pretty good, but I don't think they're going to be able to make it. But we'll see.
Yeah, I'm not a Pacers fan. I actually hate them, so it's a little biased. Just
Yeah,
letting y'all know. But
they do have an easy schedule though. To be fair, they have the 22nd toughest schedule, so they do have an easy schedule. But I don't know. I feel like I'm still not sold on that.
yeah,
Gone.
unfortunately, they can catch up. And I don't
Yeah,
want to
they
see
could.
that because they could potentially knock my team out. That's the thing.
Right.
They could potentially overtake the Bulls and overtake the Wizards. That's the
Right.
story. They're
Right.
chasing the 10. They're not getting
Mhm.
any higher than the 10 in my opinion.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're a good team. That's the thing.
Mhm.
They're a very good
Yeah.
team, solid, well constructed. Um Matherin's great, and
Mhm.
like you said, Halliburton's great too. And if Halliburton didn't get hurt, they would probably be sitting around eighth. I would think
Right.
that they would probably be where the Hawks are.
Yeah.
So, but they can easily climb. So don't count them out. Unfortunately, like I said, bias, but yeah, don't count them out. They can climb.
Yeah. You know what I just realized? We didn't
What's up?
talk about Lonzo.
It's fine. We don't have to.
Well, it's all right. We're about to talk about him now because we're about to
Okay,
talk about the
cool. Yeah,
Bulls.
might as well.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, I guess you can cut that part out.
Yeah.
So the Bulls, 11th, they're 30-36. We actually we hadn't mentioned this in that other stretch of injuries, but just because he hadn't played at all. But Lonzo, it sounds like he's probably going to be due for another surgery, a third straight surgery on his
It's crazy.
meniscus, I guess. Just really rough stretch for him. Hopefully he makes it out. It just sucks,
Right.
for him what's happened with these injuries. But with the Bulls, they're 30-36. Um, so they have one more loss than the Wizards at 10. So they have a chance, but they've kind of been meh as
Yeah.
of late. I mean, they just got a win over the Nuggets. I guess that's, a pretty big win and an important win, but I don't know. This team has just been kind of really up and down, and I don't really know what to expect out of these kind of like play-in Eastern Conference teams. I
Yeah.
feel like they're a little bit more unpredictable with what they do.
For sure.
But I don't feel that strongly about the Bulls. I mean, I guess Levine and DeRozan could just have a stretch where they play really well, but I don't know. I'm without Lonzo, it just feels kind of like a weird team. I don't know. I don't really feel too strongly about them getting in.
Yeah, it's an incomplete team with Lonzo. I think you hit it right on the dot. And there's so much funky stuff going on. Like they're the epitome of mid. Like they just don't I don't know, they just don't have any like firepower to them. There's not that fire that they had lit underneath them last season and before, but I don't know. Chicago's just not it's not it for me. And I could easily see the Pacers overtaking them, to be
Yeah.
honest. And like I said, the Pacers could overtake the Wizards as well. So
Yeah. And again, we'll see what happens, but it's
anything
just
can
kind
happen
of a
though.
yeah, it's just a rough story for the Bulls,
Yeah,
because they were really good last year. Then
right,
they've just been snake bitten with all these injuries, and they just haven't been the same since. It just sucks because they
right.
were a very fun team to watch last year.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Um, so moving on into the actual play-in teams, teams that are currently in the play-in, I guess. Your team, the Wizards, at 10, they're 31-35.
Come on, man.
Basically 500 the last 10 games.
Yeah,
5-5. They've also battled some injuries, right? Over
yeah,
the course of the season. I know
yeah,
they got a few guys out right now, right? So,
yeah. I think Monte
this
Morris
team,
is still out.
yeah, this team has been really strange because they've had stretches where they've actually played pretty well, but then they've also had stretches where they've been pretty awful. I think early in the season, right? They had like what, a 10 game losing streak,
Yeah,
I think.
yeah,
Yeah. So I don't really know what to expect with this team. They actually do have some good players, obviously. I mean, Beal, Porzingis, Kuz. Those guys. I do like some of their other players. Like I do like Avdia. I like Gafford. But I don't know how to feel about this team. It just is a very strange team. Their schedule, they have the 13th hardest schedule. Some big matchups against like Milwaukee, Denver, Boston, Philly,
Right.
Cleveland, right? So those are some tough matchups. I mean, I guess if I don't think the Bulls or the Pacers get in, I guess I kind of have to say that the Wizards will get in. But I mean, again, it wouldn't shock me if one of these teams ended up not making it. But I feel like of the Bulls, the Pacers, and the Wizards, I guess I would have to say the Wizards probably have the best like high end talent.
Right.
So I
Yeah.
feel like
Yeah.
it would be the most disappointing if they didn't get in. So I feel like that they'll probably be that 10 spot.
Yeah. I'm
Mhm.
kind of gonna make a comparison here. So like, I don't know how many of you guys watch the NFL, but this is basically the wild card. So the Wizards are the wild card. They could mess everything up, but at the same time, they could also just lose. They could go out and lose. If the play-in started today, obviously. Um, and to be frank, I'm not sure that the Wizards can take any of the teams above them in a series. You know what I mean?
I mean, it's just hard because again, with the advent of the plan, like yeah, you have something to compete for, but at the same time, like your chances of upsetting, one of the top seed or the number 1 or 2 seed is just really, really small because that just doesn't happen in the NBA.
Yeah, and it's like I saw the Bucks game against the Wizards. They don't have a chance. I'm sorry, they really don't. Um, and it's just unfortunate because there's so much talent on the team. You got Kuzma, he's great. Porzingis, who's really turned the narrative on his career around. He played second fiddle to Luca and got basically moved out of there. And then you have Beal, who's kind of struggled with injuries. But like you said in the previous episode, he's been more efficient and he still gets his numbers, but they have gone down a little bit just due to the overall construction of the roster. And I think what we're looking at with the Wizards is they're just a team who's trying to figure it out. It's kind of similar to Portland, to be honest. We said that multiple times too. But yeah, they just don't know what works. They know what doesn't work and they continue to do it. That's the problem. So, and the thing with the Wizards is they're prone to going on losing streaks. You said it. They went on a 10-game losing streak earlier in the season. So don't be surprised if they go on like a 5-game losing streak and then the Pacers are at number 10 and the Wizards are out. You know what
Yeah,
I mean? Like
right.
they're so unpredictable and that's why I call them the wild card. They're the Joker's wild. You don't know what they're going to do. It could be great or it could be bad.
Yeah. Um. Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, it's just been a very strange team,
Yeah.
so they could get in, but they might not. And I guess the thing you kind of have to factor in, obviously, if you don't know the play-in rules, right? 9, 10 are eligible to get in, but in order to get in, the 10 has to beat, 9 or 10 have to beat each other. Whoever wins plays the winner or
Mhm.
loser of 7, 8, right? So if you're 9 or 10, you can only be the 8th seed.
Yep.
I guess I didn't necessarily make that clear initially, but yeah, if you're 9 or 10, the highest you can be is 8, right? So
Right.
7 and 8 play each other. Whoever wins is 7. Whoever loses has to play the winner of 9 and 10, and whoever wins that is the 8 seed.
Yeah.
Just to kind of throw that out there, just in
Mhm.
case. I mean, I know people have talked about that for a while, but
Right.
so moving on to the 9th spot, the Toronto Raptors, right? It feels like since the Jakob trade, they have been better. I think they, lost back to back, but they're 6-4 in their last 10. I do think that trade did help them. It still feels weird because it just, it felt like that they were kind of just going to move guys. I mean, we said that they should probably wait until the offseason before they do that,
Right.
as opposed to at the deadline. And I do feel like he's helped them, especially with Van Vliet. It just kind of gives him a good pick and roll partner,
Mhm.
um, just to kind of do more things with, because it just feels like their offense at times is just really just strange. They're not a very good shooting team.
Right.
Um, yeah, but still, this team has definitely taken a step back from last year because they were really good last year. Um, and it's kind of been a really disappointing year for them, and they've had a lot of drama too, stuff with the coach, stuff with some of the players. So, I mean, I think that this team is going to be in the play-in though. Still, I mean, because they do look better, so I think that they'll still be good enough to stick around in the play-in. I don't see them falling out.
Yeah, I don't see any team below them overtaking them at all, to be honest. And their biggest enemy right now is themselves. Van Vliet is kind of he's just not having a good season, unfortunately. and like you said, with all the rumors surrounding Anunoby, that probably also sparked a rift in the locker room with the coaching and all that stuff. So, but like you said, I don't think they're falling anywhere. I think they're probably going to stay right at number 9.
And again, in fairness, similar to the West, this spot right here is really close, right?
Oh,
Yeah, but so obviously a win streak or a losing streak can kind of determine your season right there.
yeah,
But it's just a little bit different because with the West, like everybody, even like from 4, and onwards, you could drop, right?
right.
But here, you're probably not dropping. I don't think any of the top 5 are dropping.
No.
Um, so yeah, so the only real movement is the play-in teams.
Mm-hmm.
So moving it to number 8, the Atlanta Hawks, right? The newly coached Atlanta Hawks, I
Mm-hmm.
guess. Um, Feels like they've still kind of just been average, right?
Yep.
5-5 in the last 10. I guess Quinn Snyder has only coached maybe like 3 or 4 games, I
I
guess.
think it's
Um,
4.
yeah, exactly. So they've still kind of been just eh. I mean, we thought that it was an upgrade as a coach, but we just thought roster wise, it probably still wouldn't save their season necessarily.
Yeah.
Um, so I feel like play-in is pretty much where they're gonna be. I mean, it does feel kind of like they started the season off really good, then they had some injuries. Now they just kind of feel like I said, kind of like an average team. Um, so I don't know. Trey Young has not had a great season,
Right.
especially with his shooting. Murray's been fine. Capella has been in and out of the lineup at different points, right? Obviously, Collins has been in and out, and he had a bunch of trade rumors he had to deal with. Um, but I don't know. Like I said, there's not really a whole lot for me to say about this team, but I still feel like they're going to be in the play-in. So they're still going to be in the mix, but
Yeah.
they're definitely not as good as what I think if you're a Hawks fan you would have hoped because
Yeah.
you don't. It's kind of like with the Gobert thing. You don't make a trade like that and give up all those picks. Kind of hurt your future unless it's a trade where for sure you're going to be one of the best teams, and they definitely have not been one of the best teams.
Yeah. The way I would describe this team is false advertising. But in regards to where they are in the standings, I don't think they're gonna fall. I think 8 is probably where they're gonna stay. But yeah, and I don't know. Like, I don't think they're gonna climb either. I think they're just stuck. They're just stuck there. I don't see the Raptors overtaking them, and I don't see them overtaking the Heat either. So I think 8 is where we're gonna see them until the postseason.
Yeah. Right. Then we got the Miami Heat at 7. Right.
Mhm.
They've kind of just been just there. They've existed.
Yeah.
They were really good last year. They were one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference. Obviously, even though it was kind of a weird series, they were very close to, beating Boston, even though it didn't really feel like they were that good against
Right.
Boston. But they've had a really tough season. They've had a lot of injuries. Um, just a lot of the pieces that they've brought in this season just haven't really worked out. They lost PJ Tucker, who hasn't, been the same this season, right? But they miss him a lot. And some of these other guys, Lowry's been really banged up, and when he's played, he just hasn't been that good. It feels like he might be close to being done.
Yeah.
He's missed, 15 plus straight games, so it's been kind of a weird thing. Butler's been good. Adebayo's been really awesome. Obviously he was an all-star. But not much else to write about, honestly. And it feels like that they could just be maybe they turn it up come playoff time. But I
Yeah.
don't know. It's really hard to get a beat on this team. They added Kevin Love. He's actually been a starter for them. So that's kind of been an interesting factor. He's been
Yeah.
okay, I guess. Nothing amazing, but I don't know. They've been 3-7 in their last 10. It just feels like this is probably just not their season.
Yeah.
But again, they have some playoff tested guys, so maybe come playoff time they'll look a lot different, and maybe they give their first round matchup kind of a scare. But I don't know. It's been weird. I don't want to count them out because again, they were really good last year, but I don't think they're going to go too far. I think 7 is probably where they're going to stay, unless they have like a late season explosion. But
Yeah.
you're kind of running out of time. So
Yeah.
I think 7 is probably where they're going to be at. They're 4 losses above Brooklyn, right? They have 4 more losses than Brooklyn. And at this point, you only have like 15 or so games left for a lot of these teams, right? They're 35 and 32.
Right.
So they basically have 14 games left. So with 4 more losses, that's just, kind of hard to make up. So
Yeah. With the Heat, they're kind of just stuck there in limbo. limbo. That's what they're in. And they've had a lot. They have a lot of pieces that haven't really shaped out to be that good in the long term. Duncan Robinson, he's not as good as he used to be. So it's just interesting. I don't think they're gonna blow it up. I think they're probably just gonna take some time and
Retool.
reevaluate, retool, like you just said. But
Yeah.
standings wise and how I think they're gonna do come playoff time, I don't think they're gonna win any of their matchups. But
Right.
uh, yeah, I think they're probably gonna go in to the playoffs as the seventh seed. Probably, yeah, they're just gonna stay where they are. I don't see them moving either.
All right. So moving on into the sixth spot, right? So these are for now, right? The out of the play-in teams or play-in safe teams, right? So Brooklyn's at 6, 37 and 28,
Right.
won 3 in a row, even though they're 4 and 6 in their last 10. So they're kind of, pulling it together.
Yeah.
They had a big win against Boston where they, came back, had the largest comeback of the season. Um, Mikal Bridges has been just ridiculous since the trade deadline. I mean, we
Yeah.
talked about it at the time. Um, we kind of liked a little bit the trade for, we liked it for Phoenix because they're getting Durant, but we did still mention that we still liked Mikal Bridges a lot.
Yeah.
Um, and obviously, at this point, considering the talent on the Nets, he kind of has to step it up if they want to win, right?
Yeah.
Ben Simmons is no longer what he once was, at least for now, right? So he's not even playing. Um, so they're kind of relying on guys like Dinwiddie to create, right? Cam Thomas has had DNPs the last few games,
Yeah.
even though he had that stretch where he was on the scoring binge.
Right.
Um, so it's pretty much been up to him, and he's lived up to the task. I mean, he's been incredible because I didn't really think he was going to be this good.
Yeah.
Obviously, when a player's role changes, they can look different, but I mean, he's been great. So
Yeah.
give credit to him and give credit to the coach, obviously, because
Yeah.
he's had to battle a lot of adversity this season. So it's kind of cool to see them being where they're at, even without Durant and Kyrie Irving.
Yeah. I'm with you all the way. I like the Nets a lot, and you know, I don't think they're gonna fall. If anything, they could, continue to win, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think they'll probably stay around 6.
Yeah, I think they'll stay around that area. I don't see them falling. And I had said that they might fall, but that they have proven me completely wrong. And yeah, I'm excited for their future too. It seems like they've got something special there with Bridges, and
Hmm.
they can only go up from here, in my opinion. So
Right. Yeah. Moving on to the Knicks, the team that's kind of been the talk of the town on the last couple of weeks, right? They won 9 in a row, had their streak broken by Charlotte, which is kind of interesting of all teams, but still won 9 in a row. Brunson's been out a couple games, but obviously Brunson before he got hurt was awesome. Randall's been insane. Emmanuel quickly has been terrific. Having a really strong season this year, right? This is third season, right? Yeah.
hmm
So yeah, this season his efficiency's gone up, right? His defense has been good. He gives them a lot of energy. So I mean, he's been awesome. Robinson's been good stepping into that defensive role, right? Barrett's kind of been up and down, so that's kind of something to watch out for. But this Knicks team plays really hard. I think they're semi fun to watch, right? I mean, Randall's game is
Yeah.
kind of weird, but I do think it is kind of an entertaining team to watch. And obviously, the fans love the team. But it's kind of cool to see the Knicks have another good team this year. And I think they are going to be a feisty team. I think regardless of who they play in the playoffs, they're going to, cause more trouble than they did 2 seasons ago when they were in the
Yeah.
playoffs. Just because I think with Brunson you have some extra creation, and I think that this version of the Knicks team is just better than that other Knicks team. Um, so I think they're probably going to stick around. Obviously, that win streak helps, right? But they're kind of packed in with Cleveland, so it'll be interesting to see where they finish. But I feel like 5 may be more likely.
Yeah.
But we'll see because they're playing the Kings right now, so obviously that can kind of make a difference. Currently, they are uh, down to the Kings right now, and it's still the second quarter, but obviously if they lose, that makes it tougher. Um, but Cleveland also has a really easy schedule, so I feel like it's probably more likely that the Knicks are 5 and the Cavs are 4.
Yeah. Like you were saying earlier, not a lot of movement here, I don't think. And the Knicks, they're the true definition of like grit and grind. Like they'll fight tooth and nail for everything, every point. Um, so they'll be fun to watch come playoffs. Like you said, Brunson brings in some extra energy that they were missing. And then Randall, he does what he does. He's really good too. But the roster is really good. I think I underestimated them.
Yeah.
I didn't have them. I would not have picked them to be the number 5 seed this season. I would have thought they would have
Yeah.
been maybe 7 or 8. But
Hmm.
this is good. This is a great look for them. And
Yeah.
I'm excited to see where they go from here. But standings wise, 5 is right where I think they're gonna be.
Yeah. Um, moving on to 4, right? And like I said, from here on out, and also like you said, the standings will probably stay the same from here on out.
Yeah.
Cleveland's at 4. Um, at the beginning of the season, they looked incredible. They, kind of tailed off since then. They're still really great at home. Not great on the road though, which is not a great sign. 14-19 on the road.
Right.
Um, Mitchell and Garland obviously have been really cool. Mobley, as of late, the last few weeks has really stepped it up, and he's kind of taken like a big leap.
Mm-hmm.
He still is not really a 3-point shooter, which
Right.
is kind of unfortunate because I feel like if he can get that 3-point shot, he's like that makes the team even more dangerous.
Yep.
But he's shooting a really low percentage, right, like in the 20s, and it just feels like that may not come around.
Right.
But regardless, he's still awesome defensively. So, that combination with him and Jared Allen is still going to be really good. But their bench to me is kind of disappointed. Rubio obviously coming back from ACL. But he's been okay. But LeVert really disappointing. He's basically a scorer that hasn't really been able to score as of late. So that's not really a good thing. Um,
Yeah.
uh, yeah, so for them, I do kind of worry come playoff time because again, they play the Knicks in the first round, and it
Right.
wouldn't really shock me if the Knicks kind of upset Cleveland. I'm not saying they'll beat Cleveland, um, right? But I don't know. Of those two teams, it just feels kind of weird, right? Because again, but the Knicks also haven't been that great at home, so you just never know. But at the same time, I still like this Cleveland team. I just wouldn't put them in that tier that I thought that they were going to be
Yeah.
earlier in the season. And I still didn't look at them as like a championship team just because I didn't like the wing situation. But I thought with the way they started, they were going to be a little bit better. But still,
Yeah.
I mean, you can't complain if you're Cleveland. I mean,
No.
because this is going to be your first playoff trip in a while, right? The last time they made the playoffs was LeBron's
Yep.
last season in Cleveland in 2018. So,
Yep.
and this is going to be the first time in forever that they made the playoffs without LeBron. So, I mean, if you're Cleveland, you still can't really complain. You
Right.
do the Donovan Mitchell trade 10 times out of 10.
Yeah. And that's the story is, you know, they look better with Donovan Mitchell. Um,
Yes.
yeah, 10 times better. And
Mhm.
I just don't think they're ready though. I just don't think that they can beat any team above them come playoffs. Um, and it kind of shows in the standings.
Right.
There's a gap. There is a um team quality gap. If you look at how
Yeah.
these teams above them are crafted, it's a little bit different than Cleveland. Like you said, the bench of
Right.
Cleveland is just so spotty and streaky. It's kind of hard to watch sometimes. But me personally, I don't think the Knicks can beat the Cavs. I think it'll be a bloody fight, but I don't think
Yeah.
the Knicks have what it takes to,
Right.
dethrone the Cavs from
Yeah.
4. And yeah, I don't see them moving. Like we said, no movement here. I don't think. But with Cleveland, I'm a big Garland fan, and
Yeah.
I'm rooting for them all the way. But I just don't know if they can really win.
Yeah, I guess I would say I probably would still feel better about the Cavs than the Knicks.
Yeah.
Just because I think the X factor with Mitchell, I would just trust Mitchell as a playoff guy
Oh
more
yeah.
than anybody on the Knicks.
Yep.
So, yeah. So I didn't want to make it seem like I was
No,
picking the
no.
Knicks over the Cavs.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of like where I think it'll be a dogfight.
Oh yeah.
Whereas if this was like earlier Knicks in the season, right, it wouldn't even be close.
Oh yeah.
Because the Knicks look a lot better now than they did before.
Yeah, for sure.
Moving on to third, we got Philly. 43-22, 7-3 in their last 10. They've had some, impressive wins over. They had an impressive win over Milwaukee, but
Mm-hmm.
then they also had a disappointing loss against Boston.
Right.
But at the same time, it's two different teams. I do think Philly is good. I still don't think that they're as good as Milwaukee or Boston.
Right.
I think they could make it tough, but I just feel like they're in that tier below those two teams.
Yeah.
I think depending on who they play, it could change something because I feel like they do match up, I guess, a little better with Milwaukee than Boston, just because I feel like those teams are more comfortable playing slower, I guess,
Right.
maybe. And also like with Embiid and Giannis, you have somebody that's like big enough to contend with Giannis. Not that he's going to guard him necessarily, but just another guy that can kind of match up. But still, I feel like regardless, I would not pick Philly over either of these teams. They've been good. Obviously you can't complain about being third in the East. I like some of the moves that they made. But their bench is still not great. And I still have questions about Harden,
Right.
and Embiid, that duo come playoff time, combined with Doc Rivers. More so Harden than Embiid, but still, I don't know. I don't know how to feel about this team because, like I said, they've had times where they've looked really good, but then they've also had times where they've just been really whack.
Right.
Tyrese Maxey's been back in the starting lineup, which is good because you need to have him play well. Because it was kind of weird. It felt like he was getting worse and worse as the season went along, but he's been much better as of late. But I do understand kind of like this weird thing of like, do we want to start him because of our defense has been really bad, or do we want to bring him off the bench so our defense can be better? But I just feel like Rivers is going to have to be better with that. So I don't know. Philly, like I said, good team, but
Yeah.
wouldn't pick him over the other ones.
Yeah. Here's my thing. This is how I'm approaching the East. So I'm kind of like carving it up, right? So I'm
Right.
putting like the Bucks and Celtics in their own tier, you know?
Yep.
But then when it comes to the 76ers Cavs, I put them in their own tier. Then I have like the Knicks, Nets, and then I mean like they're in their own tiers too, but like
Yeah.
it's all carved up to me. And I just don't
Right.
think the Sixers are on par with the Bucks and Celtics. And
Yeah.
it shows in the standings. Simple as that. And we've already talked about their roster multiple times. We're not confident
Yep.
in the coaching either.
No.
So
Nope.
I don't think we're gonna see Philly making a trip to the finals. I don't
Yeah.
even know if they're gonna
Yeah.
go deep in the playoffs. If they go deep,
Yeah.
their limit is probably the Eastern Conference
Right.
Finals. That's their limit.
Their problem. Yeah, their problem is in order to get to the finals, they have to beat both Boston and Milwaukee, and I
Right.
just think that that's a very tough ask.
Yeah.
And they have to do it on the road. And I
Yep.
mean, they've been good on the road,
Mm-hmm.
19 and 12 on the road, so that's fine. But again, like you just if you're a Philly fan, I would just kind of be nervous, right? If it's like game 7 on the road against Boston or Milwaukee with a trip to the finals on the line, and you kind of have to like put your stock into Harden and Embiid and Doc Rivers, just I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. Like I said, they've been good, but I'm not putting them in that tier with those two teams. I think
Yeah.
they're by themselves.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Moving on, Boston at 2. They've been playing 500 basketball as of late, right? So Milwaukee's above them. They've obviously been one of the best teams, right? Brown's been great, Tatum's been great. It feels like they've kind of hit a lull as of late. Like I said, 500 in the last 10 games. Um, Robert Williams, I think the issue is like you just can't trust him health wise
Right.
when he plays. Right? They look, awesome. They look like a juggernaut. Because of the defensive versatility he brings. And when he doesn't play, they look a lot more vulnerable.
Right.
And it's just again, can you rely on him to play 16 games in the playoffs? I don't know. I mean, that's kind of a tough ask. Um, so I just can't really rely on that. But I still feel like, Boston and Milwaukee, those are your two best teams. Um, but I will say I feel like the Bucks are better. I mean, I could be wrong, but I feel like
They
the
are.
Bucks have a higher ceiling than Boston. Just because of Giannis, and I like their depth better than Boston. But we'll talk about it as we get towards the Milwaukee discussion.
Yeah, with Boston, I think they're in the same tier, but at the same time, I gotta give the edge to Milwaukee. Um, but
Yeah.
yeah, they're a great team, and once again, no movement. They've solidified themselves top 2 seed, so
Right.
no surprises to be honest. It's a good thing. It's a good thing that Boston's in the playoffs. I hate Boston,
Yeah.
but it's good for
Same
basketball. Yeah, it's good for
as a
basketball
Laker
and it's
fan.
great
Yeah.
for viewership. So,
Right.
yeah, and I like Tatum a lot. That's the thing. I like Tatum a lot. So
Yes.
I have no issues with where they are and how they play. So
Yeah. And then obviously the Bucks, they have the best record in the NBA. They have the best record in the East. I feel like they have the best player, and I think that I think they have the best team. Um, so I mean, they've been 9-1 in the last 10. They had that stretch that we talked about earlier, right, where they won 16 in a row or however many games it was, some
right,
ridiculous amount. Um, and even when games where Giannis has been out, right, they're still winning. They have a ton of depth, right? loved what they did at the deadline.
Oh yeah.
Adding some guys like Jay Crowder. Joe Ingles is, healthy. He's playing really well. The key for me for them is Chris Middleton, right? Because like for him, he's battled a lot of injuries over the course of this season, right? He obviously missed the second round against Boston last year. I think if he was healthy, I'd stand by. I think they would have beaten Boston. But regardless, you got to have him healthy. If he's healthy, I think that this is the team to beat.
Yep.
But if he's not, obviously it's going to be a lot tougher. They're still going to be really good. They're still going to be formidable. But the X factor here is Chris Middleton. He needs to be healthy. And he's had some solid games the last couple of games, but still, right? Like you got to get consistency out of him. Because if you can get that, I think, like I said, I think this is the team to beat. Um, and it's pretty amazing, because again, considering where Boston was at the beginning of the year, and at different points, you weren't sure what to do with Milwaukee, but again, Drew Holiday's picked up the slack, with
Right.
Middleton out. He's having one of his best seasons as a pro. Giannis, when he plays, he's been awesome. Lopez has had a great season.
Yeah.
And they have a ton of versatility, a lot of options. Budenholzer, I think, at this point has solidified himself as one of the best coaches. I know it got kind of shaky, right, when they were in that Brooklyn series, but I think he's proven that he's a very good coach. So I think this is the team to feel really good about. It's just again with kind of similar to Boston, you're relying on a guy that is dealing with a lot of injuries right now. So
Right.
can you get, that return out of him, and can he stay healthy for that playoff run? Because if he can, right, then they got a really good shot at winning it all.
Yeah. And with the Bucks, like they're perfect. They're perfect in my opinion. Um, they're the best team in the league, and the roster isn't too different from the championship one. That's what you got to keep in mind. So they could easily win again, and I think they probably will. um, and when Giannis isn't playing the best, they're guys that just step up and are gonna
Right.
score or defend
Exactly.
whatever needs to be done. If Giannis isn't
Yeah.
doing it, they
hmm
fill in for him in
Yeah, I just
numbers.
checked tonight against. Yeah, I just checked tonight against the Brooklyn Nets. Brooke Lopez at 24 points, 9 rebounds, 9 blocks. So,
Like
I
holy
mean,
cow, that's
yeah,
crazy. So
yeah, exactly.
like I was saying, like this Bucks team, they're the ones. I think, like you said, they're the ones to chase. They're the ones to beat. And I don't know if any team can beat them in a 7 game series. Honestly,
Yeah,
if they're healthy, I think, and even if they aren't healthy, like I said, they're really good, well coached and disciplined team. So, yeah, all good stuff. And playoffs are right around the corner. So we're getting hyped. So I hope you guys are too.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, so, and again, even after we post this video, the standings will probably be different
Yeah.
because, it's getting down to the wire now because, we're in the teens in terms of games remaining,
Yep.
right? We basically have a month left in the season.
Right.
And then we have the play in and then the playoffs. So at this point, it's kind of getting to the point where teams are going to kind of have to show, what they're made of because,
Yep.
if they don't, then they're going to be out. And if they do, they're going to be in.
Best time of the year.
Exactly. So I guess to wrap it up, we got, I guess, some little mini news, things to kind of discuss a little bit.
Right.
Josh Hart, he's going to decline his $13 million option, according to Michael Scotto. Um,
Our guy.
so yeah, obviously he's been really important for this Knicks team. It seems like they're saying that he's going to resign. I think that's obviously the right move. He's been really good for the Knicks.
Yeah.
He's been a big part of why they've won all these games as of late. And again, that's a great place to be. So I think it makes a lot of sense for them to re-sign him because again, he's a big part of their team.
Yeah. I'm hoping he can find a home there. Stay
Yeah,
there long term, but he's
right.
really good.
Because he's
Like,
bounced around.
yeah, and I believe he went to Villanova, if I'm not
Yep.
mistaken.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he was on the championship Villanova team, right?
Yeah.
And then was drafted by the Lakers.
Right.
Moved from the Lakers to New Orleans in that AD trade. Then moved to New Orleans to Portland, I
Yeah.
think, in the McCollum trade, right?
Right.
Um, yeah, and then moved from New Orleans to the Knicks at the
Yeah.
deadline. So
He's had
he's
a
been
journey.
around.
Yeah, he's had a journey,
Yeah,
and
but I think
I
everywhere he's been impactful.
yeah, he's an impact player.
Mm,
That's the perfect way to
Yeah,
describe him. If he's on the
yeah,
court,
great rebounder for his height.
yep,
Good, Good shooter, good finisher around the basket, just smart overall player. I mean, he was one of my favorite players when he was on the Lakers.
Yeah, all good things. I love the guy. So pause, but
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. So Sean Marks, GM for the Nets, he's expected to return. So I guess that kind of suggests that they like the return they got from the Durant Kyrie trades. Again, we'll see where they go, but they've been competitive. Right now they're still a playoff team, and I think they'll still be a playoff team. So I guess you can't really complain about that when you give up two of your best players.
right,
So, I think this is the right move. And, for them, they're kind of in a different era now, obviously, where they don't have superstars. They're not necessarily competing for a title.
right.
So I guess if you're Brooklyn, you just also extended your coach. So it's kind of nice to have some stability,
Yep.
um, just to figure out where you're going.
Yeah, they're just building structure. I think that's all it is, and it's a good move. And it's more of a future thing. So I think he has a great mind, and I think it's enough to build, a contending team. And I think all they can do with this roster that they have currently is just continue to build around it. And I think
Yep.
that's what they're extending him for. So it's good. It's good news.
Yeah. And then, I guess, kind of like a little mini news. I feel like this was something that was discussed earlier in the season. I guess according to The Athletic, so Grant Williams basically he turned down like a 4-year, $50 million deal prior to the season. I guess, he's probably looking for more money. It's been kind of a weird stretch for him as of late. The last few games, it feels like he's been struggling. We'll see where it goes, but I understand this situation, right? That happens with a lot of these guys, right? Because they believe in the offseason they'll get more money.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious to see if he'll get more. I don't feel like he will. Maybe I'm wrong, but
No.
if obviously if they want to keep him, they're going to have to pay him, and I feel like they probably would prefer to keep him. Unless there's somebody better that they can acquire in a sign and trade. But still, I think he's an important part of the team. So we'll see where this goes.
Yeah, I feel like he's a important part of their defense. And the intangible stuff. I think that's what it is. It's more of he's more of a character guy. Doesn't have too big of an impact on offense, but defensively, yeah, he's decent. So I wouldn't mind seeing him stay in Boston. And this could be a testing your value kind of deal. You know how business goes. So we'll see what goes down.
Well, I guess that wraps up this episode of Off Ball Takes. Again, we still continue to want to say, thanks for supporting. Thanks for viewing our content, especially those shorts. We appreciate you guys doing that. So hopefully this season continues to be a great one. So we appreciate you listening. So thanks for everything, and we'll see you at the end of the week.